Although I won't be doing this for all 30 teams that I plan on designing and creating, but I did do a goalie for the Ottawa Senators. A friend had requested that I do a goalie for one of the OHL teams, and while waiting for the jersey colors for that team, I designed the goalie and used the Ottawa Senators, of course, my hometown team, to create the character. So this is the goalie for the Ottawa Senators. I should let you know that we will again be using a standard rainbow loom in the aligned configuration, where the pins are all even with each other. And the bands we're going to be using, again, are black, clear, white, red, and silver. You will also need a C-clip as well. For the hand attachments, we are going to need to reconfigure our loom to be offset so that the pins are staggered from each other. And we're going to start with red bands. So we're going to put 2 red bands from the first to the second peg on the right, and 2 more red bands, followed by 2 white bands, and then 2 black bands, and 3 black bands for the glove, and we're going to cap this with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. Now for the next glove, we want to move down to the bottom of this pin, and we're going to start from the 4th peg from the bottom, and we're going to put 2 red bands followed by 2 red bands and 2 white bands. And now we need to make the mitt for his hand, and we're going to use 2 black bands, and we need to start again from the 4th peg from the bottom and go down 2 times with 2 black bands, and from the 2nd peg, which is technically the 3rd peg from the bottom, over to the 2nd peg in the center from the bottom, and we're going to go down once, and then we're going to close this off from the 2nd peg from the bottom to the 1st peg in the center. And we're going to cap this center peg with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And now we can loop this glove. We're going to reach inside and grab the top 2 bands and loop over to the left. And now we're going to loop up the center, and we will loop up the left side. And we can remove this from the loom. And you'll notice I didn't put holding band. I don't want this held very tightly. I want it to be loose so that it will be wider and bigger. And we're going to attach this to the bottom peg here on the right. And it will be the cap band for our glove hand. And before we loop these, we want to grab a single black band and wrap it 4 times around our hook. And we're going to reach in and grab our white bands and slide all 4 loops down onto the white band, and we can loop the last 2 red. And again, we want to take a single black band and wrap it 4 times around our hook. And then we're going to reach in the cap band and grab the bottom 3 bands. I only grabbed 2 there. You need to remember we've used 3 bands for the glove here, so you want to make sure you grab all of them. And we're going to loop both black, and then when we get to the 2 white, we're going to slide all 4 bands down onto our white and loop it forward, and we can loop the last 2 red. And I'm going to get my holding hook, and I will remove these from the loom. And we're going to set this aside. And now we can loop the legs, and you can either stay with your offset loom for now or move to your aligned loom, whichever way you choose. We're going to put 2 red bands from the first peg on the right to the second, followed by 2 white bands, and then 2 red bands. And then we want to take our silver for our skates, and we will put 2 silver bands. And we're going to cap this with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. We're going to do the same thing for the next leg. 2 red bands, 2 white bands, 2 red bands, and our 2 silver bands for our blade, capped with a single black band wrapped 3 times around the peg. And we can loop this, reaching inside our cap band, grabbing the silver bands and looping forward in a teardrop shape. And we're going to do this all the way to the top, including looping the second leg. And again, we want to make sure we're grabbing both bands and that we're forming our teardrop shape as we go. And we can grab our holding hook, and we're going to remove these from the loom. And we can set this aside. We're now going to make our blocker pad, and for that we are going to use single black bands, and we're going to go down 3 times with a single black band each time. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Down the center with a single black band 3 times going down the center. And now we want to take a double loop black band, and we are going to go around each of these pegs horizontally across our blocker pad. We should have 4. We want to do the top as well. And again, we want to put a cap band on each of these bottom 2 pegs. So we're going to take a single black band and double it and wrap it 2 times around the center peg, and another single black band and double it, and we will wrap it 2 times around the right side peg. And now we can loop this. We're going to reach in and grab just 1 single black band and loop forward, and I'm going to release the tension. And we will do the same thing on the other side and loop all the way to the top. There we go. right, and now we just need to do the slip knots for this. So we're going to reach our hook down through the center, grab a hold of our single black band, pull it up through, and form our slip knot. And we are going to do the same thing for the top peg on the right, to reach our hook down through, grab a hold of our black band, pull it up through, and form our slip knot. And now we just need to remove this from the loom, and I'm going to put my hook down through the top of each and carefully remove our blocker pad from the loom. And you will have the holding bands will be showing on the outside at the back, and that's normal. You want it to be like that. That is intentional. That's going to help us attach the blocker pad to our hockey player's arm. I guess our goalie's arm. So there's our blocker pad, and we're going to set that aside. For the goalie pads, we are also going to be using single black bands, but we also need 2 red bands and 2 white bands. So we're going to start, and these goalie pads are not the same, so you'll have to pay attention and follow along. We are going to take a single black band and go down 4 times down the right side. And we want to go down 3 times down the center with a single black band. The 4th band going down the center will be a white band, and we want to put a red band from the last center peg, which is the 5th peg down the center, up to the 4th peg on the right. And we are going to band the 2nd goalie pad, and we want to go down the right side 3 times with a single black band, and once with a white band. And we want to go down the center 4 times with a single black band. And again, we will go from the second last peg from the bottom of our bands in the center to the last peg of our bands on the right. And we'll push these down. We need to attach our holding bands, and we're going to be using double looped black bands, and we're going to start at the top and put 2 bands across the first 2 pegs, and we're going to do that all the way down. I'm going to do the same thing for the other goalie pad. And now we want to put cap bands on the bottom 2 pegs of each of the goalie pads. And we want to take a single black band and wrap it around each peg 4 times. So what I'm going to do for the first one is take a single black band and double it, and then I'm going to wrap it around this peg twice. And that will give me my 4 loops on that peg. A single black band, doubled, and I will wrap it around this peg 2 times. We'll do the same thing for the bottom pad. Single black band and double it, wrap it around the right peg 2 times, and a single black band and double it, and wrap it around the center peg 2 times. Again, giving us a 4 loop cap band around each peg. And now we're ready to loop. We're going to start with the goalie pad on the bottom, and first we want to reach in and grab the red band, just the red band, and we are going to carefully loop it over onto itself in the center. And we can loosen those bands. And now we want to reach in and grab just the white band, and we're going to loop that forward. And we're going to go all the way to the top here of our bands, and then we can go down and loop up the center, and we're going to grab the single black band and carefully stretch it forward. And again, we're only grabbing one band here to loop it forward. And we're going to do the same thing for the other goalie pad. Reach in the center and grab just the single red band, and we are going to loop it over to the right. And then we can loop up the center, starting with the white band, and then the following three. And we want to go down and loop up the right side. All four of these bands. Again, making sure that we're grabbing just the one band. There's only one there to grab. Forming our teardrop as we go. And we want to put a slip knot on each of these four top pegs for the each pad. And what we're going to do is we're going to reach in through all the bands, grab a hold of our loop, pull it through, and form our slip knot. We're going to do the same thing for the other top peg. Reach our hook all the way down through, grab a hold of our loop, and pull it up through the center, and form our slip knot. And we want to do that for our other goalie pad. We're going to reach down through, grab a hold of our loop, pull it through, and form our slip knot. And for the final peg, a single black band, reaching down through, pulling the band up, and forming our slip knot. And we can remove both of these from the loom. I'm just going to reach my hook down in through the top and carefully remove each goalie pad from the loom. And again, you will have your holding band will be on the outside of your pad, and that's normal. You want it that way. That is intentional. It's supposed to be like that. So we're just going to straighten out our goalie pads here and tighten up our slip knots and our goalie pad. And that's one. And now we will remove the other one from the loom. Again, reaching in and carefully removing this from the loom. And once again, your holding bands will be on the outside at the bottom, and that's exactly what you want. So please don't think you've made a mistake. You haven't. It's intentional, and it's supposed to be that way, so that we can attach it to the legs. It'll make it easier. Just going to tighten my slip knots, and we will set this aside. Okay, before we start banding our loom, I just wanted to go over all of the attachments. I know that we've had quite a few, and even without ears and noses and eyes, you should have 2 goalie pads, 1 blocker pad, 2 leg attachments with skates, and 2 arm attachments, 1 with a goalie glove and 1 with a regular glove. And we can set all of these aside. And now we're ready to band our loom. And we're going to start with the helmet. And we'll be using black bands. We will be using double bands for this. So we're going to start in the center with 2 black bands going from the first to the second peg in the center. we're going to put 2 black bands from the first peg in the center to the first peg on the left, and 2 from the first peg in the center to the second peg on the right. And if I said first peg here, I meant second. And we want to put 2 black bands from the second to the third on the left, the second to the third in the center, and the second to the third on the right. We want to put clear bands for the visor, and we're going to put them from the third to the fourth on the left, the third to the fourth in the center, and the third to the fourth on the right. And for the rest of the goalie helmet, we're going to take 2 black bands and go down the center, 2 black bands from the center up to the left, and 2 black bands from the center over to the right. And for the goalie's neck guard, he is wearing a white neck guard. So we're going to take 3 white bands and go down the center. And now we're moving on to the jersey. And we're going to be using red bands. Again, we're using double bands. So we're going to go down the center 4 times with 2 red bands. And now we're going to go over to the left side and the shoulder. We want to go from the 6th peg in the center to the 7th peg on the left. And we will go down the left side 3 times with 2 red bands. And we can move over to the right. Again, 2 red bands from the 6th peg in the center to the 7th peg on the right. And we will go down the right side with 2 red bands 3 times. On each peg. We're going to move down to his shorts. Sorry, they're hockey pants. I keep forgetting. And we are going to go down the center 1 time. And we will go down the left side 2 times with 2 black bands each. And again on the right 2 times with 2 black bands each time. And we can start the top of his hockey socks with 2 red bands going down the left side and 2 red bands on the right. And we're going to close off his shorts with 2 black bands from the 2nd peg from the bottom to the 3rd peg in the center, and 2 black bands from the 3rd peg in the center to the 2nd peg from the bottom on the right. And now we're ready for our holding bands, and we're going to take a single black band and go across the 2nd pegs going down, a single clear band across the 3rd pegs, another black band across the 4th pegs. Moving down to the shirt, we're going to go across the 8th pegs, the 9th pegs with red bands, a single black band around the 10th pegs, and a single black band around the 11th pegs. Now we're ready for our attachments, and we're going to start at the bottom with his skates and his hockey socks. And we're going to put one on the left side and one on the right. And our arms, you need to decide which side you want your goalie glove to go on. And I think my goalie glove is going to go on my left side, which is his right hand. So I'm going to put it on the left peg, the 7th one down from the top of his shoulders here. And I will attach the other glove to the 7th peg from the top on the right. And that's it for our attachments right now. And now we are ready to loop. And I want to grab my hook, and I'm going to reach inside my skate attachments and grab the bottom 2 red bands and loop forward once on the left, and again I'm going to grab the bottom 2 red bands and loop once on the right. And now I want to loop towards the center. I'm going to grab the top 2 black bands, and they're going to go to the center. And the next 2 black bands will also go to the center. And now we can loop up the left side, and I'm going to go all the way up to the neck. Staying inside the holding bands and making sure that I'm forming a teardrop shape as I go. And when I get to the shoulder, I want to make sure that I'm grabbing just the bottom 2 bands and not any of the arm bands. And again, we're going to reach in and loop forward, staying inside our holding bands and looping forward as we go, making sure that we're forming our teardrop shape. And now we're going to loop up the center, and we want to grab just the bottom 2 bands, and we're going to form our teardrop shape as we stay inside the holding bands and we loop to the peg above. And there we go. When we get to the neck, remember that we've used 3 bands for our neck guard here. So we want to make sure when we reach in that we grab all 3 before we carefully loop to the peg above. It's very tight here, so I'm going to put my hook in through the center of that peg and roll it around to release some of that tension. And then I'm going to reach in and grab the top 2 bands, which are going over to the right. The next 2 bands are going over to the left, and the last 2 bands will go straight up the center. And now we can loop up the left side, staying inside the holding bands and making sure that I'm grabbing both bands and looping teardrop shapes to the peg above. And we can loop all the way up to the top center peg. And we're going to do the same thing on the right side. Again, looping to the top center peg. And now we can loop up the center. There we go. And now we want to double check that we have looped everything. And we can check by looking down through the side, and it's usually pretty obvious if we've missed something, and we haven't. So now we can take our slip knot band, and we're going to place our hook straight down through the center peg at the top, grab a hold of our black band, pull it up through the center, and gently tug it into our slip knot. And you don't want to tug too hard because it will break. But now we're ready to remove this from our loom. And I'm just going to start at the bottom and carefully release the bands from the pegs. And when I get to the neck, I know it's tight there, so I'm just going to reach my hook down in and release the bands so that I'm not overly stretching them to get them off. And the rest should come off fairly easily. And again, when I get to the last one, I'm just going to put my hook in and wrap it around the peg. And now he just needs a little tweaking. I need to stretch his head a little bit. And I want to adjust his feet. So I'm going to straighten my cap bands, put my hook down through the center of the silver bands, and give them a tug to the side. Again, this is just to define the feet. And I want to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to straighten out my cap band, my hook, and place it down through the center of my silver bands and give a little tug to the side. And again, that's just to define my feet a little bit. And now we again want to grab the two of the black bands here on his wrist, and we're going to stretch them out and tuck our glove through that so that we have two black bands on each side of his wrist. And again, we can separate these a little bit, and this is just to represent the stripes on his uniform. And we're going to do the same thing with the other arm. We're going to grab two of the black bands at his wrist and tuck his hand through so that we have two black bands on either side of his wrist. And again, we'll just separate them a little bit. They tend to kind of migrate back towards each other, but we'll just hope for the best. And now we want to attach our pads. So we're going to start with the blocker pad. And if you recall, I said that this holding bands that were left on the outside are going to help us attach it to our arm. They are. What we want to do first is take our slip knot bands and we're going to double it. Once we've doubled it, we want to see which side our holding bands lie on, and we want to make sure that they are facing down so that we're going to put this on his arm on the back, because we want to fold his arm over so that the pad is in the right position. So we want to slide our hand in, and this is the hand without the big glove, and we want to slide our hand in, and we can let go of those bands, and then we are going to tuck his hockey glove through the two exposed holding bands. And then we want to take our hook and go through the center of our teardrop as opposed to down through the top or the sides, and we're going to give a tug so that his arm is going over in front of him like this. And you can play with these and reposition the bands so that it's going to sit properly. And we're going to leave that like that. And now we want to attach his shin pads or goalie pads. Before we attach them, if you'll notice, we attached the red and white bands so that they're on opposite sides of each other. So you want the stripes to be on the outside. The ones on the left side are going to be for the left leg, and the ones on the right side are going to be for the right leg looking down on your character. So we're going to attach the left one first, And again, we want to take our slip knot bands and we're going to double them, and we can tuck his leg in and slide this up, and then we can take our holding bands that are exposed, and again we will tuck his foot through, and we'll just slide up the goalie pads until they're in the proper position, like that. And now we want to add the goalie pad to the other leg. So again, we're going to take both slip knot bands and making sure that we're holding this the right way. So the stripes are on the right, and we want to double our bands. And we're going to tuck his leg down in. And we'll slide these bands up his leg. And we're going to tuck his skate in through the exposed holding bands. And then we can position his goalie pads. And I have to readjust his foot here so that it's going the right way. And there you go. And this will be our goalie. And if you have done a goalie stick for him using my other tutorials, you can just attach that to his arm, and the stick is going to be attached to the hand without the big glove, so we can also loop this through the exposed holding bands of his blocker pad. So we're just going to tuck the end of the stick through, and we'll have to reposition it. And to get a better grip on it, we can also grab the two bands from the top of his blocker pad and tuck the top of the stick through there. And if you don't like the way that looks, then we'll just have the stick pointing out to the side. And there you have it. And I'm going to adjust this a little bit. And I'll just have him holding his stick. And I'm going to make him do the butterfly, like that. And with his stick. And the last thing we need to do, sorry, almost forgot this part, we're going to have to tuck our slip knot band in the back out of the way. So I'm just going to grab a hold of it and weave it through a couple of bands at the back of his head, just so that it's out of sight. And we will reposition his arm so that he's holding his stick properly. And again, I'm going to put him in the butterfly position with his legs to show off his goalie pads. And he's ready to stop that puck. And there you go. This is my Ottawa Senators goalie. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you try it. And if you do, please post photos of it below in the comment section. And let me know what you think as well. I love to hear from my viewers. Don't forget to subscribe. Like I said, I will be doing all 30, and if the Ottawa Senators aren't for you, don't worry, I'm doing the rest of the NHL as well. Or if you have a favorite OHL team, let me know, and I will try to do them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.